Clear prop.
Star 73, Yankee number 2, following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear subject, 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I am fantastic as always. This is episode 101. We have done this for almost 2 years straight now, and we're on a bi-weekly schedule now. This has been a lot of fun, and first time we've taken a week off. It's kind of like a little void in my life, but hopefully you guys have had a chance to catch up on past episodes and are enjoying everything we have been talking about. This week we are tackling what I call the black hole in aviation. What do you think, Wally?
I definitely agree with it, because when you brought it up, I kind of cringed because I thought, oh boy, I'm gonna have to do some research on this.
Well, without further ado, we are talking about basic med today. I think people hear about the highs and the lows. It's good for 4 years. It's easy to do. Your home doctor can do it. But I honestly, up until the past 3 weeks, didn't know much about it. Decided to take it on and understand more about it. And for me, it seems like it was the right thing to do, and I'm happy to tell everybody I am now flying on basic med. Wally, for you, how many people have you examined as check ride candidates that were on basic med?
Obviously it's not something I keep a tally of, but I would say out of 750 check rides-ish, I would say that I have had probably 3 instances of dealing with basic med. 3 out of 750.
That is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage point. I didn't think that it was going to be as easy as it was. Honestly, COVID, I gained a little bit of weight. My blood pressure's a little up. I just didn't want to take any chances on being denied a medical. And I'm not planning on making money right now. I'm not going to be a commercial pilot anytime soon. Doesn't rule it out for me because I'm on basic med now. I still have the same chance and can go back and get a second class or a first class medical anytime I want to. But I just thought it was time for me to explore basic med, and it really does seem like the right decision for me. I'm not terribly out of shape. I'm a little overweight. I'm planning on running the Houston Marathon in January. I've ran it 9 out of 10 years. That doesn't make you a healthy person, but I just didn't want the chance of going to an AME and maybe failing a medical and then having to go through the rigor of correcting or fixing it. Basic med has a ton of advantages, and I think I always thought basic med was for someone who couldn't get a medical or someone who was really old or really sick, but that's really not it. So Wally, you've been in aviation for 34 years. Clearly you've heard about basic med. How shocked are you about what you've heard about in the last 30 minutes before we started recording, and what have you really learned today?
I'm shocked. I am. I'm not going to say any of this was new to me because I've looked into this stuff before, and when it first came out, I think all of us read up on it. But there were things that I'd really forgotten about it. I knew there was a weight limit to the what weight of airplane you could fly under basic med, and I didn't remember what that number was. I knew there was a seat limit to the number of seats in an airplane, and that sort of thing. But there's not a whole lot of information there, and I really think the average person with about 15 minutes of time on their hands could learn a whole lot.
Wally, you were surprised with some of the things I shared with you, but let's dive into kind of my life cycle over the last 10 days as I really decided to do this and what I did with my doctor, and kind of share it with everybody out there in case they're interested in doing it. It really is an easy thing to do. So first thing, I went to Google like everybody else and started researching. And the best resources that I really found were on the AOPA website, we try to share the AOPA website and their resources a lot, but it was really valuable to see what they had. Quickly, I was turned to the official FAA documentation. The FAA has a form, as the FAA always does, and I pulled that form down. It is FAA 8700-2, and it's really a guide, a checklist, a guide, and a checklist. So let's talk through the process. So first of all, I had my annual physical with my doctor not too many months ago, and I asked her if she was aware or had ever done basic med for anybody else. And she said no. She asked me to send her the document, which I did, and she skimmed over it and looked at it, and she surprisingly to me, she said, this seems to be a lot like a Boy Scout physical. And once she put it in context of a Boy Scout or a Boy Scout leader's physical, she said, I do this kind of thing all the time. And the document clearly states any licensed doctor can do the examination and fill out the checklist. So she was very much on board and said, look, call my staff, schedule a follow-up, and we will get you in to do this fairly quickly. And for a doctor who's really hard to get into to see, she was very accommodating. She said to her team, double book me. And it was really about a 15, 20-minute exercise in a doctor's office. And I did it a couple days ago, so we're recording this a couple days before the show comes out. So it was a real easy process. So I go in, very similar to my annual physical that I normally do. They weighed me. They took my blood pressure, went to the doctor's office and waited for a few minutes, and then we went through the checklist. Lots of controversy on the basic med checklist we'll talk about in a minute, but we go through all the checklist items, and then she fills out a couple of acknowledgments, and then I have really 4 sheets of paper that are my checklist, the 8700-2 form, and then her agreeance or approval of that checklist. And some of the things that really surprised me were that no one ever has to see that documentation. That's really a private thing between me and my doctor, and by my doctor signing off on it, she's saying that I'm cleared to fly as long as I have a valid driver's license and I don't take myself out of the game, right? So we've all hopefully learned the I'm safe checklist, and we know that if we're tired or been drinking or whatever, we shouldn't fly. Like, that stuff still all applies, of course, right? But if I feel good enough to fly and I feel like nothing's inhibiting me from flying on basic med, I have 4 years of quote unquote medical freedom to go fly, as long as I take another online course 2 years from now. And in 4 years, I'll see my doctor again, and I'll take the physical component again. I can take the online course again, and I'll be good for 2 more years until I take the online course, and then I'll be good for the other 2 years, which means in 8 years, I only really have to see the doctor twice. And as a young man who's about to turn 50, that seems very appealing to me for somebody who doesn't plan to fly commercially, but does want to do some flight instruction. So we'll talk about limitations and things like that in a minute. But Wally, it was super easy. It was nothing out of the abnormal. Took a couple pieces of paper into the doctor's office and left there with the ability, really you're leaving the doctor's office with the ability to take the online course, which is also free from the AOPA. But once I completed the AOPA online course, then I kind of get a certificate, and I get a little pocket card. All that's supposed to be in my logbook. And the interesting part, which I read to you and said before we started recording, was I just have to have it and be able to show it when asked for it. So that raises some questions, and there's a lot of regulations that are open to interpretation, but doesn't say I have to have it with me at all times. I just have to be able to present it when asked for it. So do I have to have it all the time? Doesn't sound like I do.
Yeah, I mean, that's one question that comes up in private pilot check rides all the time is I'll ask the applicant if they are required to have their logbook with them. And they're used to doing it because as a student pilot, you do have to have your logbook with you because you have to have those endorsements with you. But, most pilots beyond the private pilot stage probably don't have their logbooks with them unless they just keep it in their flight bag all the time. I mean, I know I don't. Well, actually, I do. I have an electronic logbook on my phone, so yeah, I guess I do have my logbook with me.
Yeah, and all my basic med documentations has been scanned and attached to what would be my medical in ForeFlight, right? And it has a 2-year date on it, so I know that it's managing kind of my ability to fly with me. And if someone were to ask, I would be able to present those things to them. If they asked maybe a ramp check, or God forbid I was in some sort of an incident, I would be able to show it to them to prove that I had the right documentation to be able to fly under basic med. So you mentioned some kind of questions that you knew there were some limitations to. Let's talk through some of those limitations. So it wasn't like I've never flown and I just went and got basic med. I think the big one right off the bat is that you would have had to have had a medical at some point in your past. And I've had, I guess I've had 4 or 5 medicals now. I think I started with a third class when I first started flying. I've had 3 or 4 second classes since then, and don't really plan to banner tow or do any pipeline or any commercial flying. So that's where basic med kind of came up as an option for me. But I have, my medical was expired. It was only expired by a few days, but it was expired. And that's okay. The gotcha there would be if you had a special issuance, it too can be expired. But if you were required to get another or a different type of special issuance, which would be pretty rare, it'd be like a mental problem and a heart attack or something drastically different like that, then you would have to have another special issuance before you were able to fly under basic med again. So luckily for me, no special issuances and nothing that's going to change that, hopefully in the near term. So my medical was expired. I had a medical after July 15th, 2006 that was valid, and I've never been declined a medical. So I've never been told no or haven't passed a medical exam, which gave me the ability to qualify for this doctor's office exam, if you want to call it qualification. I met the requirements, right? So from there, again, went to the doctor, did the forms, got left, did the class, got the certificate. Now I'm good to go. So what can I do? What are the options for me as a pilot to do? And I knew a flight instructor many, many years ago, and I still aspire to get my flight instructor certificates. So I definitely didn't want to be inhibited by that. And if you go out to the AOPA website, they have a basic med pilot and physician's guide that gives you the ability to really understand everything that the doctor needs to do and everything that the pilot needs to do to be able to be ready to go or able to go in the ability to get basic med. And then there's a bunch of basic med course FAQs as well that are out there. But as a pilot that uses basic med, I am more than able to be a certified flight instructor and provide flight instruction, and the rules provide that I'm allowed to fly with someone who doesn't have a medical. So that means a private student. Once I achieve my certificates to be a flight instructor, then I can fly with someone who doesn't have a medical as well. But I can't fly something that weighs over 600 pounds.
6,000
pounds. The 600 might be me. So, Wally, what does that mean I can or can't fly? What do you know of that weighs more or less than 6,000 pounds?
6,000 pounds, when you start talking about that weight, you're starting to talk about cabin class twin engine airplanes. For those of you who are familiar with the Beechcraft Baron, which is a very popular twin engine airplane, at least the older ones. I'm not sure about the newer ones. I know the older ones had a max takeoff weight of 5,400 pounds. So I think when you're talking 6,000, you're probably you're in the cabin class. You're in the Piper Navajos, probably. But there's also a seat limitation, right?
Yep, there is. Well, I guess I don't know if it's a seat limitation or a passenger limitation.
Passenger.
I'd have to read the real regs, but it says I can fly with no more than 5 passengers. So to me, that sounds like a 6-seater. I'm not sure there's many 7-seaters that weigh less than 6,000 pounds or have a max gross takeoff weight of less than 6,000 pounds, but no more than 5 passengers. I can't leave the United States, so I've never thought of leaving the United States, but that would mean I can't go to Mexico. It does say I can go to the Bahamas, but I can't fly outside the United States.
Okay.
And I cannot fly at an altitude at or below 18,000 feet. So I must stay below 18,000 feet, which, since I only fly single engine piston airplanes for the most part, even my twin can't get to 18,000. I'm limited. I'm not limited there because I'm only going to fly where I could fly anyway, right?
Right.
When's the last time you were at or above 18,000 feet, Wally?
About 2 hours ago.
Yeah, Wally and I are not in the same room today, but Wally was on a big trip and was way up there for sure.
Yeah.
So, again, I keep going back to in my brain that this was an ideal solution for me right after I passed my commercial check ride if I really wasn't going to make money flying. And it's probably the right thing for a lot of people listening to this show that are general aviation pilots who have had a medical, who don't ever plan to make money, or if they do plan to make money, don't plan to make money for more than 4 years from now. Even if I decided that I wanted to be a commercial pilot, let's just say I keep flying regularly, I get to 1,500, and the airlines call me and I want to go fly for them, all I've got to do is go pass a first-class medical then.
Right.
Doesn't mean I can't go back to getting a medical once I went basic med. It just gives me this breathing room between now and then to where I don't have to pay for that medical, can see my family doctor, do the checklist on a routine visit, and still have the same flexibility to do the flying that I want to do. Doesn't mean everybody wants to do it, but do the flying that I want to do. So let's talk about this checklist. So kind of crazy, lots of stuff on the internet about this checklist. Pretty basic for the most part. On the kind of like your check-in document at your doctor's office, you fill out all the stuff, any medication you're taking, date of birth, color of eyes, blah, blah, blah. And then you sign the airman's declarations, and then there's a checklist that your doctor's going to fill out. And on the checklist, it's only got 22 items. But I would say there's 2 items that were kind of shocking to me, Wally. Kind of goes through the whole listen to your heart, listen to your lungs, ears, nose, throat. You're going to have to do your eye exam. And on bullet number 9, it says anus. I was shocked by that, Wally.
Oh,
you've
wow.
had a few first class medicals, and I've had a few third and second. They've never ever talked to me about anus at all.
Yeah.
So in parentheses on number 9, it says not including digital examination. So there's a lot of blogs, lots of posts out there on the internet. What does this really mean? What is it? Do you have to do something? Is it required? You know, the checklist doesn't provide a lot of guidance, but the AME book on the FAA does, and it's a little vague, much like any other regulation, and it kind of says doctor's discretion. I'm not a legal interpreter, but it pretty much says if the doctor thinks that you may have an issue that needs to be checked, it's to their discretion on where and how they check that. Let's just say my checkbox is checked, and we'll leave it at that. The next thing, a few boxes down, is GU system, and I don't know that I knew what GU system was. Do you know what a GU system is, Wally?
No, I know what a GI system, but no, I've never heard of a GU system.
So GU, and I don't even know if I want to try to say these words, but it's General Torial Narrari, and it's pretty much your privates as a man, right? And so she had to make sure I didn't have a hernia. And that examination did occur, and I was shocked. I have not been a high school football player who had to have a physical for many, many years, But we went the route of checking to see if I had a hernia. I do not have a hernia, but that was much more invasive, I would say, than any second-class medical that I've had, or any third-class medical that I've had.
Right.
And again, back to the internet says, look, it's just an old document that the FAA presented to Congress when they were trying to get Basic Med approved. But yeah, it was a little bit more invasive. I think my doctor was learning while I was learning through this process, right? No question. And if you think Basic Med's right for you, I would encourage you to have a conversation with your doctor, review the AME guide. The AME guide is the guide for a true airman's medical examiner that they use to examine for third, second, first-class medicals. It, too, kind of leans towards the, if there's not a problem, maybe you don't have to check it, but it's a little vague as well. But beyond that, Basic Med was a piece of cake for me. They checked my eyes. I did a vision exam. I did all the other items on the checklist without avail. A lot of people on the internet said they just told their doctors to write not examined for the anus. And that's like the only gotcha. And it was a gotcha that weighed on me for a few days as I was leading up to the exam. But it's something that has passed, and I don't have to worry about it for 4 years. Hopefully, somebody puts together a new checklist. And I might myself call the AOPA and say, let's address line 9. That's pretty silly. But other than that, piece of cake, something that I think everybody who doesn't want to fly professionally but wants to fly for fun should consider, because it was a simple process. After I trained my doctor, it was a no-brainer for her, and I think she looks forward to doing it for other patients that want to fly under Basic Med as well.
So who we said this earlier, I think, but let's just recap. Who is eligible for Basic Med?
Anyone and everyone who has had a medical since July 15th, 2006, a valid medical, and has never since then been declined a medical. So if I had a medical in 2010 and then 2012 came along and I failed a colorblind part of my medical and I was not allowed that medical, I would not qualify for Basic Med.
So a 60-year-old person in 2010 who says, I'm going to go out and learn how to fly. They go out and they get a third-class medical, and then something in life gets in the way and they kind of get away from it. And now they come back 12 years later. They're now 72 years old. That person is, in fact, eligible for Basic Med.
They are. They're very much, and it's if they've been going to a doctor, a family doctor, it's probably going to be very, very easy for them to get the checklist completed, no doubt.
And you do have to hold a state driver's license, is that correct?
That's true. So you do have to have a valid driver's license, and I guess to that point, at some point you would have to also take the course from the AOPA,
right,
or another source. There's two good options out there that are free. So I do have to go to the doctor and I have to take the course. But the course, albeit was good, it's kind of like anything else we've taken. It's a little dry. It's the same old stuff, a little bit defensive driving feeling, but it's all good information. Should you fly if you've been drinking? Should you fly if you're tired? And you got to answer those questions correctly to pass their course.
Okay.
I think the other big questions that people ask or want to know about is, what can I fly? I've heard a few things in the last few days, like, what if I've had a special issuance medical? I don't know anybody that's had a special issuance medical. I know people that have had, I know people that have sodas. I guess that could qualify as a special issuance, but special issuance to me is more like I've had a
bypass surgery
stint. Yeah, bypass. Yeah. I've had bypass, and I've had to have my doctor reissue me a medical with a special issuance. That if I have that one thing, and my medical have expired, I still do qualify for Basic Med. But if I have a different special issuance, let's say maybe years ago I had a DWI and I've gone through the HIMSS program and I have a medical and a special issuance for that. Then I have a heart attack of some sort and I have to get another special issuance. I would have to go get that special issuance again and have that medical again to qualify for basic med past that. So that new special issuance is kind of like a reset to the whole process.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And then I think there was some gray around, do I have to see an AME? And all over the documentation, it really just says any state licensed doctor. And I think my doctor was concerned or worried at first. I'm flipping through my paperwork to see exactly what the words say. It just says any state physicians eligible. And
now, I'm going to plead ignorance. What defines a physician? Is a dentist a physician?
That's a good question. And on the document, it says medical license number. So I would think if they have a medical license number and they meet the declarations in accordance with Section 2307B2C4 of the FAA Extension and Safety Security Act, they would qualify.
So in dental school, I guess they teach them about anuses.
I hope not. I hope my dentist has nothing to do with that, for sure. No question. Good point, though. Yeah, that's the one thing that I think is going to continue to be a question for people, and they'll have to work through. And if anyone from the AOPA is listening, you avoid that in all of your paperwork, and I'd like you to address it because I think it's a little crazy for sure. Some things that I was surprised by, and I don't think it's a free pass, but medication is something that on the AOPA guidance and on the documentation is really clear and called out. Like, I'm going to flip through here and find exactly what it says. The first section of medication in the AOPA document says that it's actually the second paragraph. While there is no list of specific medications that are prohibited for pilots flying under basic med rules, certain medications are not safe. I thought that was shocking, that once on basic med, that you really don't have a list of medications. In a third class medical, that's very different. There are absolute no drugs. And if you're going to self-examine and self-report, then there are clearly things you shouldn't take. But there is not a prohibited list under basic med that like there are for third class, second class, and first class medicals, which seems like a big miss. If they're going to put the other thing on the checklist, you would think they would have captured some medicine, but not necessarily the case for sure under basic med. Another thing, basic med doesn't use the Med Express. So if you've done a first class, second class, or third class, you've probably gone through the basic or the Med Express stuff to ask for a medical and print your receipt and go in to see your doctor. The only requirement is to print out the comprehensive medical examination checklist, which is that 8700-2 form, and take it to your doctor and fill it out with your doctor. Again, family doctor is just fine. They do not have to be an AME. And the AOPA guide is really intended for them to understand what they should, and to probably give them a little comfort that they are allowed to sign this document and give it to you for sure.
So the only thing that is transmitted to the FAA is the record of you doing the ground school, basically, the AOPA.
That's it.
Okay.
Yep. And while I have scanned my checklist and my self-evaluation and put it in my logbook, none of that information was shared with the FAA. And there's a lot of verbiage in the documentation that says my doctor is the sole authority now on whether or not I'm able to. And it's pretty interesting. The documentation says operate a small vehicle or a small aircraft. And my doctor is the one who has the sole ability to create a correction plan for anything that she doesn't feel comfortable with. So let's assume, I really haven't come up with a good example, but let's just assume that I have a broken left arm. And my doctor says, well, that's not going to make sense for you to be a flight instructor. You can't even pull the throttle in and out, right? And I said, okay, understood. And she's the one who gets to decide that when my cast is off and I have enough mobility that I do qualify for basic med. None of that is shared with the FAA either. None of that's given to the FAA. It's almost like self-reporting with a coach, and that too makes me feel more confident today. And man, we've all heard these horror stories of people who have gone to the doctor and said the wrong thing, didn't mean to say what they said or whatever, and they had to go through this multi-year process with the FAA, right? And I have no reason to be afraid of that, but I also just don't want to take the chance of being told I'm not eligible and the impact that would have to my flight school and my aviation career. So I'm not going to fly if I'm tired or drunk or not feeling good that day. I know I'm going to hold myself accountable to that. I know I've got people around me that are going to hold me accountable if they see me doing something stupid. I just don't want someone to see something wrong one day on a computer and then limit my future aviation career. So basic med is the best thing for me right now, and maybe that changes in the future. But if you have any questions, send me an email, bobby@behindtheprop.com. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. This is a no-brainer for me, and I've reached out to some good mentors, professional pilots. I didn't get a chance to talk to Wally because he's been on a lot of trips, but I talked to a lot of people, and this is a really good move for me.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like it's like a tool. Basic med. It's not right for obviously it's not right for me. I've got to have a current first class medical. So basic med is something that just me personally, I'm not interested in it. Maybe sometime down the road I would be, but it's kind of like an iPad mini. I think most people out there in the world wouldn't have a use for an iPad mini, but a pilot would. It's a very good tool. This is that tool. I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of people.
I agree. And again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. Go check out the AOPA resources. Go check out the course. Lots of really good information out there for everybody. And AOPA, go have them check that checklist one more time. I think we'd all benefit from that. I think we'd have a whole lot more people on basic med if we could avoid the anus question for sure. As always, everybody, please fly safely and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at behindtheprop.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.